Good morning. I'm John Casper with the Oshkosh Chamber. Thanks for joining us again this week for our weekly virtual town hall sessions. We've been conducting these back since April, and continue to do this. We've had some great topics. A couple of our guests have been with us before. So just want to remind everybody that we're recording this session, and if you missed it or want to see it again, you can go to our website and it'll be posted there. The audience members are muted. However, if you have questions for any of our panelists, we ask that you use the Q&A tab and answer your question that way. And then after the presentations, we will ask those questions. We had a few that actually came in already, so we'll take a look at what questions come in from the audience, and then some that we have gotten offline. So we have an interesting topic tonight on everybody's mind. Plans for reopening schools. It's been a fluid situation for everybody. Not just business people, but parents, students, and the like. So it has a lot of impact on everybody. So I think with that, we're going to probably start with Vicki Cartwright, our superintendent of schools. I understand there's been some chatter among the Board of Education, and the rumor is there's potentially some reconsideration of the reopening plan, and hopefully Vicki might be able to shed some insight on that for us. So with that, I'm going to ask Vicki to start us off this morning.
Thank you so much, John. If it's okay, I would like to just do a very high-level overview about the model that we currently have in place and that is currently approved by our school board, and then pick up a little bit to what you were just referring towards. So last week, our school board did approve our 2020-2021 school year plan that allows our schools to move between instructional models ranging from face-to-face all the way to virtual as needed. Specifically, there are 4 different types of models that are in place. So I'm just going to high point what those are and then get a little bit further into the conversation. So our very first model is more of your traditional in-person learning. So that would be the model that we would be going to once we know that COVID is under control, things are looking well, and we can go back to, as you might say, business as usual. The second model is slightly different. It's called a modified in-person learning. And the students in this model continue to attend school in person 5 days a week. However, there's a lot of safety precautions that we put into place. So for example, you're having to take as to the best of your ability, do the 6-foot distancing, making sure that you're wearing the masks, making sure that you're frequently washing your hands. So it takes in a lot of those safety precautions and puts it in place. Within the school itself, we take a lot of safety precautions as well in order to ensure that we are providing an environment that is safe for our students. And the third model, this is more of a hybrid model. So in this model, what we're looking at is it's a mixture of in-person instruction that's happening, as well as remote or virtual learning capacity. So basically what happens in this model is that students attend school in a face-to-face model every other day, and then they work remotely on the days that they're not in person. This one is where we will split the populations in half. So in other words, only half of the school is in person, while the other half of the school is in that remote virtual learning environment. And then the following day, it flips. So you're every other day, you're either in an in-person model or you're in a online virtual environment at home. The fourth model is virtual learning. And so virtual learning is where all learning takes place remotely. And it's really important to understand that, a classroom, a building, or the entire district may transition to this particular model if needed due to some type of COVID-19 exposure or the situation at hand and the metrics that we're viewing as to the state of where our community is at that point in time. So when we're taking those type things into consideration, one very important thing to notate is that the virtual learning in this model is not the same as what we did this past spring. For this past spring, the goal was to keep people from regressing and to keep them where they were, whereas if the district moves to this model 4, virtual learning, the goal now is to continue learning and to push them forward as what would normally occur in an in-person environment. And it also does not necessarily prevent us from having maybe small groups of students coming into the school for maybe tutoring, for additional assistance, possibly for participating in assessments. So it gives you some of that flexibility. The last thing that we offered, and this window has already closed, was our eAcademy environment. And this is a fully virtual, year-long online school option. While the district, for high school, we have been offering this for a while now. But for elementary and for middle schools, this will be our first year for the eAcademy. However, it's important to note that we are part of a much larger consortium across the entire state, and the curriculum that is being utilized within the eAcademy has been in place for multiple years. It's a very mature curriculum. So those are the 4 models. Originally, what we were looking at for September 1st, opening school, was going into for elementary school age children. So this would be 4K all the way through grades 5, doing a modified in-person learning, remembering that that's the 5 days a week, but we're taking a lot of safety precautions on that. And then for our secondary students, those would be students in grades 6 through 12, we were looking at model 3, which was the hybrid model. So that way those students are alternating back and forth day to day. And one thing to notate also with that hybrid model is that the very first thing we do is we look at family units. So that way we're not dividing families onto opposite days. And then the second thing we do is we actually look at our core instructional courses in order to divide those at that 50% either way type model in order to have that 50-50 breakup, and which transpires all the way into the classroom. So it's not by name or last name or anything else like that. It truly is about enrollment and getting it down to that classroom level to the best of our ability. That is where we originally, where the board was, that was our recommendation that they said, okay. However, again, because what they ultimately were approving was the model. If something were to occur between now and the beginning of school, for example, we have a huge uptick in the density levels, and it's impacting our youths at a higher level within the, not just Winnebago County, but within the Oshkosh area school district boundaries within Winnebago County. The board had given us the flexibility to go ahead and make decisions based upon that data. So that is something just to take into consideration. What the board last night has asked for us to do is to come back for a special board meeting on Monday to take a look at that criteria that I'm high level describing for you. There's a lot more criteria that we look at, but that's some of the criteria that we partner with the Winnebago Health Department in making decisions as to how to proceed. So that is what's planned on Monday, is to take a look if we want to do a formal criterion-based type viewpoint. But there's a lot more information for me to get into and take a look at before I can get into any type of details on that just yet.
Okay, well, thanks, Vicki. Real quick question. Since you're coming back and to discuss that, what has changed since this first model was endorsed, and the need to come back and reconsider this? What's happened in the environment that would lead you to want to have that conversation again?
Certainly. So we are anticipating some guidance from the Department of Health at the state level that they're supposed to be releasing to us this week. And in that guidance, it gives a lot of criteria. It gives a more criterion-based approach on how to make decisions for schools, how to flow between the potential different models. So we want to take a look at that criterion if that becomes available to us in a timely manner. And if not, then it's going to be taking a look at what is occurring within our community and what is the current criterion that we're using in order to have that. We understand completely that what's happening is people want to know ahead of time a little bit as to how to prepare. What's the direction that the district may be moving in, so what can they monitor as well, rather than just waiting on an announcement, as you might say, from the district. So those are some of the things that we know are concerns, John, and we want to make sure that we're trying to address as well. So it's really having a better understanding and having people understand what that looks like, and potentially formalizing a process in place with a criterion-based approach as to how that would drive our decisions.
Thanks. Yeah, I know one more thing. You also mentioned the input from the public health department in terms of their decision. I mean, what engagement or what level of decision-making process would they have, or decision, would they have in that process?
Certainly. So to be very frank with you, they are your experts. And so we do lean on them in order to help us make some of these decisions. We've done that in the past, to be frank with you. Every school district that I'm aware of usually has a partnership with their health department. So for example, in the past, if we'd had a breakout of like influenza within a classroom or within a school, oftentimes they will give us guidance as to, okay, this is what we need to do, or help us make those determinations as to how deep is the spread and what the potential steps that are needed to proceed forward. So we have a very close partnership with them on those type of things, because as I mentioned before, they are the ones who are the experts on that, and student safety for us is our top priority. So we lean on individuals that can help guide us and can help us ensure that we keep that our top priority.
Thanks, Vicki. Reminding everybody, if you have questions, certainly use the Q&A or chat tabs on the bottom of your screen and submit those questions. Next, we have our Chancellor of the University of Wisconsin, Oshkosh, Andrew Levitt, joining us. And I know, both Andy and Vicki were past participants in our program here, so we appreciate them both coming back. So, Andy, a couple weeks out, and students will be returning. So, give us the latest.
Yes, well, thank you, John, and good morning to everyone. Delighted to be here again. Of course, when we met last time, it was about how do we wind down these schools and universities. Now it's about how do we crank them up, if you will. So we've been working very hard all summer. We've had, after the initial movement to completely online last spring, we started our planning process really in May for the fall. And it started with developing what we call the Titans Return Plan, which is really our blueprint for how we were going to reopen in the fall. Once the Titan Return Plan was completed, then we began the implementation process in terms of the hundreds of people that it is necessary in order to actualize the plan. I would say that the plan is heavily influenced and guided by the Winnebago County Department of Health, as well as, I'm happy to say, Dr. John Newman from Advocate Aurora here in town, that were very helpful providing expertise in how to safely open our university. So we are getting ready. As a matter of fact, we're in do a lot of these Zoom meetings, making sure that we have all the pieces in place. Basically, what we're going to do is we want to build a culture of safety, in that students, faculty, staff, and visitors to this campus all need to contribute for us to be able to remain open the entire semester. So our goal is to be open and in a modified face-to-face format for the entire fall semester. About 65% of our classes will be face-to-face with some modifications, and about 35% of our classes will be completely online. And as a matter of fact, of that 65% that will be with a modified face-to-face, many of them will be what we call high flex. And what that means is that the professor will teach both online and face-to-face essentially simultaneously. So that way, in the event we had a student who was had the virus or wasn't able to attend, or decided halfway through the course they weren't comfortable anymore, they can actually move online and at the same time not miss a beat in the class. And that's really the system we try to design. The safety systems at the university are predicated on certainly social distancing. And masks are mandatory in all of our buildings, and they certainly are highly suggested for if you're outside and certainly in an area you cannot socially distance. That's going to be very important. Cleaning and cleanliness, the sanitization of the campus is very, very important as well, that we will be really sanitizing all of the rooms every night in our third shift of custodial services, which we're very grateful for our custodians for all that they do. The goal is to keep people in school is certainly through the entire semester. We believe that a UWO classroom will be the safest place for anyone to be in because of the social distancing and because of the requirement of the masks. That will be the place where the transmission of the virus will be least likely. We'll have our residence halls open, double occupancy. You know, as you know, those who've been to UWO or students here, you remember that we have older residence halls with double occupancy rooms with bathrooms at the end of the hall. In consultation with our health professionals, they believe that it's going to be okay to do it that way as long as we eliminate the common areas of the residence halls so that people really sort of cut down on the amount of mixing that they would do. Testing is going to be a big part of this. We have a testing protocol that involves the gold standard PCR test for anybody who's symptomatic. So anybody can request a test who's a faculty, staff, or student, and that would be free of charge. And also, because of my new boss, the former Governor Tommy Thompson, we were able to secure a large number of rapid testing materials so that it's antigen-based testing so that we can do testing within 15 minutes to give us an idea of if and how the virus might be spreading on our campus. Finally, I would just say this, that it's on all of us. It's on the people of this university, students, faculty, staff, but it's also on our community. The kinds of metrics that will keep us open are going to be more community-based than they will be campus-based. And that's something that's going to be true for I think for everybody in the city, businesses and everything else. It's about keeping the positivity rate low. It's about adhering to the best practices we possibly can to mitigate the spread of the virus in our community. The university is part of the community, and of course the community is part of the university, and so they really are one and the same. So we're excited. We will have a 5-day move-in period for our new students, and of course we're expecting our continuing students back, and we will begin classes on September 9th, which is a little later than the other UWs. We're traditionally a little bit later because of our unique schedule. So we'll have a pretty good idea of what's happening across the state by the time we're ready to open. Back to you, John.
Great, thanks, Andy. One thing I have to mention, Andy may need to bail early because of a prior commitment. So if that happens, if all of a sudden you're not there, that we know why. So
Thank you.
quick question for you. It was a few years ago since I was living on campus there, maybe 10 or 15 years ago. But you know, living in a residence hall, especially incoming freshmen, I mean, that's a key piece of your educational experience at UW Oshkosh. So can you talk a little bit more about how that might change or how that might look for people in the dormitories?
Certainly, yes. So people would think, well, geez, that seems counterintuitive to bring people together like that in a residence hall. But it's really about forming those longer-term bubbles, if you will. First and foremost, every student, faculty, and staff will read and sign what we're calling the Titan Safety Promise, which is just a set of guidelines that we are asking everybody to abide by in order to keep everybody safe. Our residence hall programming will be predicated on this. And so this will be a very strong message that we send to everybody, particularly those in the residence halls. Our dining halls will be modified significantly, where there will be an opportunity for some dine-in. Like if you go into restaurants these days, there's a lot of social distancing within those places. And we'll have disposable plates and trays and things like that that would go with that. But the bulk of our dining, we believe, will be done through the grab and go. That there will be an opportunity for students to come in and grab meals which have been pre-prepared, still hot meals, that would leave with the student, and they would go elsewhere in order to have their lunch or their dinner. And then there's the programming. We want to make sure that we do things as virtually as possible. We're okay with small group interactions against adhering to the protocols, but larger group interactions, for instance, would be eliminated. For instance, any class that's 50 people or over, we simply are going to put online. And that's one of the things that's migrating to online, is the fact that those big PIC classes you might remember, it just won't be here anymore. In the place of those PIC classes, you'll have a class of 35 that's spread across 200 seats.
Okay, great. Thanks, Andy. Also with us, Deborah Heath. Deb is the Associate Vice President of Fox Valley Tech. She runs the show here in Oshkosh. Deb, if you could tell us a little bit more about the plans for Fox Valley Technical College.
Certainly. Thank you, John. Thank you for inviting us, and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. Fox Valley Technical College has taken a conservative and flexible approach to our return to campus plan. Our top priority continues to be health and safety of our students, staff, and faculty. And I'm really, duplicating what Andy and Vicki have already said. Many of the actions that we've taken and all of the hard work that our teams have done over the summer to prepare for cracking that door open a little bit is all about safety of our communities. For now, most of our faculty and staff continue to work from home, and services will be adjusted based on the ever-changing community health conditions. And we're following our health department and CDC guidelines very closely, and created a plan for fall opening. Our semester starts August 24th. With that said, we already have many things running across the college, but all of the doors at the main campus and the Oshkosh Riverside campus will open August 24th for a full set of programs that we'll be offering in a variety of instructional methods for fall, including online and in-person when necessary. Basically, the in-person classes that we're running on campus really are the skills hands-on based classes, and that will be on campus. That'll be about 57% of our classes, and that's over 2,000 courses that we have up right now for fall. Online classes is approximately 20% of the classes that we typically put up, over 700 courses. We've also gone to a virtual classroom where the student sits at a specific time, and that model is about 14%, so they can join us via Blackboard and Microsoft Teams. There's also a hybrid course, and that's about 9%, where the students will have some face-to-face, and they will also include some online education. The safety protocols that we have in place for Fox Valley Technical College are pretty stringent. We've got face coverings, obviously, will be required in any of the facilities and recommended in the outdoors. We also did some considerable signage to list what the CDC guidelines are for self-screening, and faculty and staff, as well as students, will have to do some self-screening prior to entering any of the facilities. monitoring themselves for any COVID signs. Another large thing that we have done is limit the class size, limit the group size, which is rather a challenge for an organization as large as ours, but we've limited the class size down to 9, 10 with the instructor in each classroom. The majority of classes we've put online, so any kind of lecture-based course, we've gone online with it. But the other lab activities, if it's a large lab, we have expanded. If it's a large area in the laboratory, we've gone up to 20 students, but they're social distance, 6 foot apart. We've really stepped up the sanitizing of all of the classroom space, and thanks to our custodial staff and faculty, everyone's going to have to participate in the sanitizing of space. We will have computer labs and walk-in service available to a limited extent, but we're putting a lot of the student services. We have the intent is to be virtual and push people to our website, or to set up some virtual meetings with any of our student services support. We've got some policies in place when there is exposure to COVID. I believe the hands-on delivery has obviously, we're a technical college, and the hands-on opportunities from everything from nursing to aeronautic pilot and truck driving, we have continued those essential programs through the summer, and we're going to continue those in fall. So really, we're opening the doors back up, but at any given time, we're going to be flexible enough to go back to more of an online environment, and to shift gears to another phase of if we need to back up what we're doing. So basically, we're starting operations the fall semester, as I mentioned, August 24th, and you know, everyone's safety is our concern. So that's all I have. Are there any questions?
Well, great. We are getting some questions in, and we had some that I'm going to ask, I guess, of all of you. You all talked about being flexible in terms of going between in-person, virtual, and that sort of thing. So question for any and all of you is, so what will the triggering event be that would trigger either you go completely in person or completely virtual?
I can jump in on that quickly, and one of the things that would trigger it would be an outbreak in a specific program area in a lab. If there's an outbreak of COVID, we're going to have to shift that face-to-face into a different, possibly doing videos and doing some virtual online so they can continue their education.
John, we are working very closly with the Department of Public Health and Doug Guerin, who's an integral part of what it is that we do. We recognize the Department of Public Health's statutory authority in working with us in terms of any need to close the university for any reason. And so in working with him, the metrics will be developed along with our healthcare partners to determine what that trigger might look like that would take us completely online. So we're doing everything we can to keep our faculty, staff, and students safe. And so we really do value the relationship we have with Doug Guerin and the county department.
And for the school district, we're taking a very similar approach as to Chancellor Levitt. And I also wanted to echo something that he had mentioned originally in his opening comments on this, is that we really need our community to be taking as many precautions as possible. Because a lot of this is tied to community spread and the ability for it to impact both staff members and students. So we're looking at both of those components as well. So just, I appreciate the Chancellor's comments and just wanted to reiterate some of those things.
Okay, great. A few questions that came in from our studio audience. These questions primarily for Deborah and Andy. Will facility rentals still be available in any capacity on your campuses?
I guess I'll go first. Thank you for the question. Yes, in limited ways. The Culver Family Welcome Center is still available for facilities rentals, of course, with significant modifications. So I would contact the Culver in order to ascertain what those might be. In terms of other university facilities, we have an Emergency Operations Center, EOC, which is evaluating on a case-by-case basis requests that are made. Again, we need to make sure that whatever the university hosts, even if it's a third party, is going to be safe.
And for the technical college, Fox Valley Technical College, we are limiting the rental space, but we are considering each on an individual basis. The size of the room is determined, and because we're spreading our classes to smaller groups, we may not have at Oshkosh, we may not have the capacity to do room rentals as much as we have in the past, but we are doing some of that.
Okay, great. Here is more of a question, I think, for Vicki. With 85% of the Oshkosh area school district parents stating they want their kids back in school in person, is it possible that the board, would go back and vote to going to a virtual learning model again?
That's a very, very good question. Thank you for that question. That's one of the things that we're currently looking at. So I would not be able to answer that directly just now at this point. However, looking at if we're adding on some of the taking that criterion-based approach, it will. I'm hoping people understand that it's going to be fluid throughout the entire situation, even though the board previously approved how we were looking to start on September 1st. If the data started getting, in other words, if our community was really starting to uptick, then we would be reverting or going into different models, even potentially at the beginning of school. That I think is a key thing for people to understand. So for example, from the time when we made the recommendation, even until the report that came out the following day, there was an increase in with the cases, the risk level for our student age groups, whereas within Winnebago County, the Oshkosh Area School District remains at that high level. So those are things that we have to take into consideration. But to get back to the root of your question, is it possible? Well, if similar to what Appleton did last night by adopting a criterion-based approach, what I call like a decision matrix, onto their existing plan, then that was applied to their current situation and what is driving how they changed and revised how they were going to be starting school.
Follow up to that, you mentioned Appleton. What happened in Appleton that led the board up there to make that change?
I cannot speak on behalf of the Appleton district. I do apologize about that. But what I would say is based off the documents that we're seeing, I think a lot of it had to do with the community spread. It was that decision matrix that I'm talking about. And what that looks like for each school district. And given that based off their decision matrix, they had 4 different areas and none of them being met for what would be needed in order to open in a safe environment, ready for educational opportunities for their students. I believe that that is what was applied in order to revise the ultimate decision. However, needs to be noted that they use a lot more than just the 4 criteria, which is included in their reports on the write-ups.
Andy, a question came up, and I think you answered it before, but in terms of workout facilities on campus, how is the university handling that?
Yeah, thank you for your question. They will, our Student Health and Wellness Center will be open. Student Rec and Wellness, excuse me, Center will be open. It will be open by appointment, and they can use their Titan app in order to make that appointment. We've taken a lot of the equipment out and spread out the remaining equipment so that we can maintain social distancing. I think all of us recognize the need for that kind of physical activity in terms of maintaining good mental health. So we certainly recognize that as well. We want to make sure the students have the opportunity to work out as needed. So there will be modifications, as with many of our facilities on campus, but that's one we're keeping open.
Okay, great. Vicki, well, this might be a question for all of you. I guess first it's a statement and then it's a question. Current statistics show our kids have a greater risk of dying in a motor vehicle accident on their way to school than from contracting COVID at school. The question is, can someone explain why there's any doubt our children should and deserve to be back in school for in-person learning?
Most certainly. And the things that people need to take into consideration are a lot of variables. So for example, if we even look down south right now, where what has happened in one of the school districts down there, where it started small and has exploded. And when that occurred, now I'll be frank with you, I can't speak to what safety precautions the district had put into place, and if there were enough, or if it's even similar to the ones that we're doing in Oshkosh. But I think the reality of that is talking about spread. Students can spread this to loved ones. They can spread this to their teachers. Within the workforce as well, is also ensuring that we have enough of a workforce to be able to continue to have in-person instruction. Because if our instructional staff are out because they have COVID, there does come a point in time where you don't have enough individuals to provide instruction to your students.
I would also answer that. North Paulding County High School is my old stomping grounds before I moved to here to Oshkosh, and in that school district, a Paulding High School school system, they don't require masks. And if you see that famous picture that was on television, not a single student was wearing a mask because it wasn't required. And so I think that's certainly a problem. You had dozens of students and teachers now who've been contracted COVID, and at the same time they've had to close the school. So I think that's sort of a cautionary tale of how quickly this spread can happen if in fact you're not putting the right protocols in place. So keeping people apart, keeping them safe, I think in the long run is going to keep our economy open. It's going to keep people in jobs. It's going to keep us moving forward. And it also is going to be the fastest way we can get through this pandemic to a more normal time that hopefully we can all enjoy soon.
Chancellor, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Chancellor, thank you for that follow-up, because again, as I was mentioning before, I was not certain as to what type of safety protocols, but you're absolutely right. It's one of our main safety protocols that we are doing in the Oshkosh Area School District, as well as at the university. So thank you for that follow-up.
As all of you were thinking about your reopening plans for the upcoming program year, were there any thought in terms of delaying the start of school a month or 2 months? Maybe even 3 months, and then just keep going into readjusting your schedule in terms of vacation time and going into the summer months. Was that ever an option for any of you?
We were thinking about going the other way, and we were thinking about actually starting in mid-August with the idea that we get the maximum number of weeks in before Thanksgiving. we had considered all sorts of scenarios, including stacking the interims that we are famous for, really playing with the different ways of looking at the calendar. In the end, we think that actually staying the course was the best option. Part of that is that in the state of Wisconsin, a state institution cannot begin classes prior to September 1, at least the universities can't. And so our normal time would have been September 9th. We're always the first Wednesday after Labor Day, and we have a late Labor Day this year. So, but we did consider it, and we modeled it, and we really looked at it. Anytime you make a change that's that drastic, you're going to have a lot of disruption in overall running of the institution, because there'll be a lot of people who support it and a lot of people who don't.
At the technical college, we did look at different lengths of semesters. We decided to go ahead with our normal schedule. Throughout the summer, what we did, it was sort of cracking the door open, is we opened up lab activities and courses for students that did not complete in the spring. So the focus during the summer was sort of a trial to ensure that the hands-on learning that they missed in the spring semester could be completed successfully. And with that being successful, we determined that we'll run the fall semester as scheduled.
For the school district, we'd also considered an approach very similar to the Chancellor, but we're also under the same obligations as to our start date. We can statutorily we're required to start school after Labor Day, and so from there, what ended up happening was not after Labor Day, my apologies. The earliest we can start school is September the 1st, unless you apply for a waiver on that. Then we also started looking at how this would stack long-term wise, because if we went into the summer months, the programming for summer school then becomes wildly disruptive. And then now you have a trickle effect that even goes into the following school year. So discussion would be that if we needed some additional time before resuming into in-person instruction, that is where our option of going into virtual school would go into play and give us some of that flexibility.
We all have a lot of experience with virtual remote learning. Being educators, if you had to give yourself a letter grade in terms of the success level of that, what grade would you have given yourselves?
Are you referring to last spring, John,
yes.
or this fall?
No, yes, this last
spring. I certainly I would give us an A+++++ for effort. I've never seen anything like it where an entire institution, and it happened all over the country. It happened at Fox Valley Technical College. It happened at the Oshkosh Area School District. Everyone on a moment's notice pivoted and put everything online, which is truly remarkable. And I can only speak for UW Oshkosh. No one complained. The students were amazing. They leaned into it. The faculty staff were incredible in the sense they understood the task in front of them. I think the students have higher expectations for the fall. And so we did what we could in the spring. I'm gonna grade us on a pass-fail in terms of the actual results of it, because I think though they were very good, at the same time, you can imagine there was a bit of a range of experiences based on the fact that everybody had a week to do this. But coming here in the fall, I think you're going to see a much stronger offering. Our faculty have gone back to school this summer, and they've taken a lot of training on how to be more effective online teachers. We've had a greater opportunity to build courses to be online and also hybrid. And so I think that's really, we've come a long ways. And so I think what we're putting out there this fall is going to be stronger. But again, it was the effort that was amazing that happened last spring.
And I absolutely concur with the Chancellor. One of the things also to even recognize is within the Oshkosh Area School District, within 3 days, we were back online on that third day. We were probably one of the fastest school districts around in order to pivot in order to go in a virtual environment, and continuing to learn from that. And if you'll recall, earlier in the conversation, I explained that last year virtual versus what virtual this year would look different, because last year was maintaining, keeping us going, not allowing our students to slip backwards, to the best of our abilities, whereas the goal for this upcoming year would be to continue to forward their education. So it's a different purpose, as you might say.
I would agree with both Vicki and Andy. You know, our students just, and our staff and faculty especially, just turn the corner on this very quickly to do everything that they could. There was some amazing work that's been done in the last 6 months, and you know, to transform and to learn all of the online methods. We had a lot of training available to them, and to educate our staff and our students. But I'd give us an A++ for this transformation from a hands-on world to a virtual, has been just amazing.
Well, Deb, I think transformational is a good way to describe what has happened, but it kind of begs the question, so what will education delivery look like in the next 20 years? I mean, I saw a piece the other day. It was a high-ranking official from the U.S. Department of Education, and she was talking about, you know, we need education. We don't necessarily need schools. We don't necessarily need bricks and mortar, and you can deliver education in a virtual way, remote way, with less teachers. So what will education look like in 20 years?
Well, John, I can talk a little bit to that, and then I'll pass it off to Deborah if that's okay. I think it's really important to also recognize that students learn in different ways and in different modalities. In addition to that, we also know what our current research shows related to students in a virtual environment, very dependent upon the level of support that's available to them at home, as well as to the age of and the developmental stage of a student. And so given that and understanding that, where I do see us transitioning more is the continual use and more use of how we provide instruction and what that looks like within incorporating technology into that instruction. So for example, it could be in that a teacher is providing some of the content, then does a gradual release with the students, has them go online in order to interact with that content in maybe some type of activity or a structured environment, providing for them that flexibility, and then coming back again in order to reinforce or reteach sometimes, or even extend those learning opportunities. So I think you will continue to see a need for the face-to-face, because as I originally stated, students learn differently. And the age of the student, the developmental stage of the student, and the level of support available in the home environment does impact that educational experience and the quality and level of education that a student receives.
Thank you, Vicki. And I would add to that, and I think if it's even the adult learner, when we're talking about technical college or university, the adult learner, everyone learns differently as well. And their ability to work virtually, I think people are adapting very quickly to the virtual environment. And I believe we've all learned new tools and technology in the last few months on what can be done, and there's more being developed. I think the future, I think we will continue to rely on a lot of the virtual education and what can be done. Even in the lab environment, there will still be, in a technical college version, there will still be the need for various hands-on experiences and you know, different types of activities in the labs and nursing and all of the hands-on things that have to be developed in the skills that they have to learn for that career path. So I think it may be a mix of virtual and, you know, no longer the 2-hour lecture or 1-hour lecture, and some of those kind of activities can very well go virtually with demonstrations from videos on demonstrations, and then have the lab activities face to face. So I think it's going to change somewhat. Who's to say in the next 20 years what that'll look like, but there will still be a need for the hands-on learning. You can't drive a truck by learning it virtually or fly an airplane.
Okay, well, thank you very much. You know, certainly it's been a big change over the last 4 months. You know, as someone once said, we're not in Kansas anymore. So we'll keep moving forward. We appreciate everything you know, you all have been doing for us. You know, hopefully we keep moving forward and doing the best we can to excel. I see that Andy Levitt had to sign off, so we thank Andy for joining us, and along with Vicki Cartwright with with the Oshkosh Area School District and Deborah Heath with Fox Valley Tech. As I mentioned before, this has been recorded. If anybody wants to see it again, it'll be posted on our website, so you can go to that at any time. Next week, we are working on a hopefully a really good session. We've invited a member from the CDC to join us. A few weeks ago, they were in town doing a round of discussions with various people. We've asked them to come back to talk about you know, what they're seeing on a national and regional and statewide basis, and you know, have some conversation with them. So hopefully we can pull that off for next Thursday. If not, it might be the following Thursdays. But we are working on that. So be looking for that promotion coming out soon. So with that, we will sign off. Again, thank you, Vicki and Deb, for being with us, along with Andy Levitt, and hopefully we'll see you next week.
Thank you so much for this opportunity, John.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, John.